and welcome back to Goldland International. We're going to be talking about the Club World Cup, Champions League, Top 5 League. You already know. Welcome back. Thanks for coming another week. With me today, I have Brandon Pereira and Rui de Oliveira once again. And from Philadelphia, Mario de Costa. Welcome, Mario. How are you? Glad to have you. Oh, I think you're muted. Anyway, I guess let's talk about results. Any standout results for you guys?
Rui?
Yeah, definitely a few, right? I think initially there was a lot of sort of nil-nils. I think the tournament started off with Inter Miami, Al Ali, 0-0, and even those nil-nils were really exciting. Palmeiras Sports was a really contentious match. There's been a couple of blowouts. We saw PSG come in strong.
4-0.
4-0, which I think a point in our last episode was, is PSG going to take this tournament seriously? I think they quickly answered that.
Yeah, they answered that question.
And I think Bayern did the same. So
10-0 is
10-0
crazy.
is a huge statement.
Against a bunch of plumbers is wild. Wild.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, you have Bayern Munich who just, it doesn't matter who they play, it's always, they're going to play hard and they're going to score and score and score. It's happened in the Champions League a ton of times against, decent European teams. They've done it to English teams, Portuguese teams, all over. They did it to Barca once or twice.
Well, hopefully they won't do it to Portuguese teams.
I'd say they have. Right? But they just don't care. And then they asked Elise after the game if he felt bad if they were up so many goals, and he said, nah.
That's a real professional.
So, that's just
a real professional
German way of playing, and that's what it is. But like Rui said, I think PSG's 4-0, very comfortable win against, Atletico Madrid, who doesn't concede too many goals, is just a telling sign of how they ended the season.
Right, and Atletico's maybe not as strong as they were like 5 years ago, but like still a solid team through and through. So to be dismantled that like effortlessly, it's looking good for PSG.
It also keeps Vitinha's Ballon d'Or campaign going because he scored another goal.
I'm with that.
So
yeah, and then there was another surprising result earlier today.
Today, Brandon, if you guys didn't know, is a Porto fan, and today they got the Messi treatment. How are you feeling about that?
It's very disappointing, but like we said last week, I think they're in a spot currently in their season or end of season, whatever, where it's one of the worst seasons that they've had in 40 years, 50 years, definitely since I've been alive, in terms of you're just losing silly games. And if I was to write down the worst Porto losses of my lifetime, you could get like 6 or 7 just from this year alone.
Rough.
And I think this one goes up there. It's the first time an MLS team beats a European team in a real competition. It's happened in friendlies, but...
Is that true?
It is true.
And
they don't really play in like these Club World Cup kind of tournaments.
You're right. They rarely play in like real competition.
It's not like they play in like a Libertadores or a Champions League. So, but in the Club World Cup, it used to be the Intercontinental Cup. This is the first time it's ever happened, and the way it happened is also, it's a very sad thing. And I was like this close to purchasing a $270 round trip flight to Atlanta last night, and I would have been a very disappointed man today.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't even have showed up today.
Were there any standouts from the Porto game?
What was that?
Were there any standouts for the Porto game? I mean, it's interesting, incredibly simple and easy to see that Rodrigo Moura is becoming such an essential part of the team. So, like, how do you feel about the performance regardless of the loss?
I mean, I don't think it's been tough with this coach. I don't think they've put ever in the 6-7 months he's been there a solid 90-minute performance.
Yeah.
You get spurts at times, and I think if we talk about the Palmeiras game, I think the first 45, 50, even 60th minute was very balanced, and there's at times where they had some nice attacking patterns, and Rodrigo Moura was just kind of going everywhere, and he was dribbling through everybody. It was very nice to see.
Right.
And then kind of like holds the ball for a little longer than he probably should, and he's still young, but when you look around and he doesn't really have the options or the players that probably can accompany him. So, but yeah, like Mario said, I think he's becoming a special player, and I don't think he'll be on the team much longer. I hope
you think he'll go this summer?
I hope they can hold him for at least another year. But the rumor is PSG for 50, which is below his release clause.
Hard to say no to PSG in this moment.
50 mil plus a player or
when
two.
they come knocking.
Plus a player?
Plus a player, that was a rumor. 3 players? I saw Asensio was one of the players.
Rumor wasn't reporting 3 players.
Honestly, not bad for Port.
Asensio would kill it.
Yeah, Asensio, I think is like
It's a tough
a league
decision.
above.
But I think another standout when you look at the first 2 games is the goalie. I think Claudio Ramos has been very good. He was very good against Palmeiras. He had an insane double save, and today he was good again.
He's your backup keeper,
And
right?
he's the backup, but everyone forgets that when he was on Tondela before Porto,
He balled out at
he was
Tondela.
one of the best goalies in the league. He even got called up to the national team. Didn't play, but he was there. And that kind of gives you an okay feeling that if Diogo Costa does leave, and he can leave for a hefty fee, that they'll be okay in terms of
Right.
goalie. And you probably, not that you want to see Diogo leave, but you'll be okay with it, especially if it's going to be like 50, 60, where you can get some other players for that value. And you know that like the drop-off won't be as insane as it would be any other year.
Right.
So those were the 2 things I would say stood out in the first 2 games, besides the rest of the horrible performance.
I mean, yeah, honestly, like Porto should have been playing at a higher level, especially against an MLS team.
Yeah.
Not to discredit the MLS, but like
No,
there's
to
levels though,
discredit
you know.
the
No, but when you look at, like, in all honesty, when you look at Inter Miami, they're not even right now the best team in the MLS. And you got Messi and Suarez, who were 5 years ago still like to
Yeah.
do whatever, but now it's like
They can
neither
barely
of them
run.
defend, they don't
Yeah.
run, and then you give Messi a free kick at the top of the box. It's
That's
like
all he needs,
It's like
though,
a penalty,
yeah.
right? So like you're kind of giving away chances when you can't really afford to. And if they can't score goals, they have 1 goal, which is a penalty over the first 2 games.
Right.
That's another worrying sign. So.
Mario, what do you think of the Bayern game? Do you think the Germans were just following orders?
Not the joke I would make on a live syndication, but yeah, I think, look, I have to applaud competitions like this and teams that allow themselves to go out in full metal. If it didn't score anything less than 5, it would have been a sham of a game, understanding the difference between the 2 teams. But to actually batter a farmer's team from a farmer's league is that is a war crime in itself.
But I think it's important for that to happen. Not that it's like a good thing, but it was a question of if are these teams going to take this competition seriously.
It's a good
And
indication.
you looked
that
at the
they
top
did.
European
Yeah.
teams, and they're putting their best 11s out, right? PSG did it, Atletico did it, Bayern did it against a team where they could have looked at it and been like, you know
Played
what,
the
we
third
played
string.
Boca and we're going to play Benfica after that. Maybe we could just, these guys have been playing 50, 60 games, maybe they could take another 4 days off and we'll play
Right.
that. And they didn't do that, right? So if you're going to question if these teams, especially the European teams, are taking it seriously, I think there was your
I would
answer.
say they are as well. Yeah.
Yeah. In addition to the European teams taking it seriously, the South American teams
Dude,
are taking it very
I
seriously.
am very impressed by every South American team I'm seeing
Yeah.
so far.
As it
Every
should
single
be.
one.
I think it's been maybe a point of discussion, right? Like where are the best teams in South America compared to the best teams in Europe? We haven't had a competition that
To
really
see,
shows
yeah,
us that.
right.
Typically, when they play these more condensed versions of the Club World Cup, it came, I think, at a different time of the year when it was the off season for Brazilian and other South American, especially Brazilian teams, because they play that weird
To
league.
cut you off real quick, do you
Yeah.
think maybe that's why the South American teams are playing so well now? Because they're coming straight from league play into this tournament.
So I've seen 2 perspectives on that. They've played 35 league games already in Brazil. That's
No, they play like 15.
They have their little, like the state tournament they had prior.
Oh, yeah, the
which is like
tournament.
a
Okay, okay.
competition for them.
Altogether, it's 35.
Yeah, and then when you add the Libertadores,
That makes
sense.
and
Okay,
league
okay.
games.
I think I would. It's definitely a point or a nuance that you should consider. There's no shot that like these European teams are at their best, right?
Right, exactly.
And then maybe the South American teams are at their probably
At least more
mostly-
well-oiled.
Yeah,
Because like
absolutely.
teams in Europe have been off for like a month, going to the beach and doing this and that, and like.
right.
Like if Liverpool was in this tournament, Liverpool's been going to Ibiza since like three matches
Yeah, sure.
before it
That's
ended.
true.
You know.
But I think another thing to look at is the weather hasn't helped the European
that's true,
teams.
too.
Not that it needs to help them, because it's just, I mean, they're.
And we
should be
are
top
catching a
teams.
heat wave over here,
But
though.
it's like you look today, and I don't think they probably felt it as bad, like Palmeiras and Al Ahly, which are played in 2
Hot
warmer
leagues, right.
warmer climates, right? But when you look at these other teams, like Atletico Madrid played PSG, and I mean they're both from Europe, but Marcus Llorente after the game was talking about like he couldn't even run, that his toenails were hurting so bad that
Yeah.
like the field is hurting them, and it's just so hot. And
Right.
but it's hot for us. We're used to it, and it
So
sucks.
that's the
but
thing.
like,
We're used to
the
it.
Europeans, they play in what, fall and winter when it's 40 degrees, 30
Exactly.
degrees.
But I think the lasting point is that the best teams out of South America are a lot closer to the tier 2, tier 3 teams out of Europe
I agree with
than
that.
maybe we initially thought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
I
We had a
think-
lot of bias towards these European
I think,
teams. Palmeiras is much closer. than
Especially
we thought.
Portuguese people, I feel like have this tendency to think that like we're like miles above the Brazilian league, and I think this competition is showing that like we're a lot closer than they're given credit for. You know.
For sure, for sure.
And
I
you
definitely
gotta-
want to add that there's the financial element. Like these teams are playing for sums of money that they would never have seen before, even in their respective championship competitions.
Yeah.
Doesn't come close to what the European competitions can do. So this is life-changing, club-defining money, sums of money. So I think they're showing out a little bit more.
And it's for every result too, Mario. It's not just like for winning. Like I think you get like 2 million or 3 million for winning a game.
Yeah.
Winning, you get 1 point
Like-
something for
Like
tying.
Bayern showed up to play Auckland City, and they could have played with 7 players and won 3 million whatever dollars and euros. I don't know
Right.
what they're doing.
And then a huge shout out to the fans. These teams are basically
Yeah.
playing home games.
For a
Thousands
lot of teams,
upon
yeah.
thousands.
My friend
of
was in
Brazilian
Miami.
fans.
He said it was all Boca fans
Yeah.
for the Benfica game.
I mean,
Like,
I went to the Porto Palmeiras game, and there was, I mean, very well organized. The Palmeiras fans were. They traveled from the American Dream. They had a whole committee go down,
Nice.
and they traveled together.
Love that.
There was 46,000 people. There was probably 40,000 Palmeiras fans there, or let's say like 30 something, because there was a couple neutral fans, but just very overwhelmingly.
Porto.
Yeah.
how much do you think Porto was at?
Porto had probably like 3,000 or 4,000 people there.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, so around here, you don't, I mean, Porto's not, in terms of fans, the biggest, especially around here. I think it's a lot more Benfica fans.
Well, yeah.
And even like when, at the ratio, so my cousin is a Benfica fan, and he's down in Miami for that one. And I was talking to him about the Palmeiras game, and then he's like, if you think that ratio was bad, just wait till the game later. And this was the game against Boca, and it was probably worse than,
Yeah,
than worse down there.
I'm sure.
But again, the atmosphere was insane. Like, you're walking up the steps, I mean, the escalator, and it's like, you feel like you're in a South American
That's
or
awesome.
European atmosphere. Nothing like you're going to watch an MLS game here. And another thing was like, everyone was super respectful to each other. I don't think there was ever like an ounce of animosity or fighting
right.
going on. Everyone
So
was there
good sportsmanship.
to just have a good time, and that kind of then highlights like what usually with the World Cup, and we talked about that last week. Where like usually that's what happens at the World Cup. Like majority of these guys are nicer to each other, and I think that's what was going on there. And then I took the train in. There was a bunch of Palmeiras fans on the train, and even some guy who used to live in Porto, and he was saying like he went to a Porto Chelsea game when Mourinho was Chelsea coach and Porto beat them. He's like, that atmosphere was nuts, and he has a soft spot for Portuguese teams and Porto in specific. And like you like to see that, right? Like everyone was just having a good time. Right?
Yeah. Speaking of Boca Benfica, let's talk to our Benfiquista over here.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Benfica started off strong. Typically, I think we have a stronger squad than, say, Boca Juniors. We play better football. But then we have this tendency to just concede on the bounce, like really unexpected goals. And
Do you think it's a
happened
lack
on
of
yours.
like concentration?
I think it is a relatively younger bunch, but I honestly think we have a slow-footed pair of center backs and wing backs that venture forward. So we could get exposed occasionally, and then a pretty huge keeper that could be kind of crappy one-on-one.
Right.
Apologies for the language, but regardless, we can see two on the bounce. So bad, yeah. We can see two on the bounce, and I was kind of feeling how Brandon must have felt today, but then we responded. We were fortunate to get that PK. I really liked how the team responded in the second half, and we played well, a man down. So I think there were good takeaways for Benfica. There's an interview by an assistant coach at halftime that I thought was really interesting. He was really fired up. He was focused and really believed that we'd get back in the game, and lo and behold, they did. So
Talking about interviews at halftime, this is like a basketball thing, kind of like interviews at halftime with coaches.
Oh, you
and
could definitely
players.
tell the
And
Americanization of the
Player
like, the sport
introduction.
here.
So like I'm at the Porto game and like they're introducing a player one at
pretty
a time,
cringe, yeah.
and they're walking and everyone has no idea what's going on. So like you just see like these Portuguese guys just walking and the Brazilian guys just like okay, just trying to get the game started and they're walking like across. It was just
Now we got to milk everything
Yeah,
here.
right, like, it
we
was
got to
just
milk
fair.
everything. Let's talk about the game. My favorite game of round one, Ulsan versus the Sundowns. 1-0 to the Brazilians from South Africa.
Jeez, let me check my notes on that one.
I think the Sundowns just wanted it more.
I think so too. I think that's fair. Mario, thoughts?
That's also a wild name for a soccer club, Sundown, knowing the actual history of that word. So it's like, oof.
I think
It's like the
there was,
Redskins here.
Yeah. I think there was like 3,000 people that said there.
Yeah, more people than I was expecting,
That game
honestly.
was delayed for like forever, and there was like 100 people in the stands. Some guy was like put out a tweet. I've counted every single person here. There's 97 people at one time.
Oh my.
So to get
That's
to,
crazy.
To get to 3,000, I mean, for two teams that you probably never hear. of.
More than I was expecting, honestly. I was expecting like 50 people max.
Was it mostly, I think, South African turnout?
I doesn't. I don't want to comment on that.
What about the Madrid game? Madrid Al Hilal.
So that was an interesting game, considering the fact that Hilal is probably better than a lot of MLS teams. I
For
think
sure.
I think they're on a better level than a lot of people
For
think.
sure.
And I think it's easier for like us here that know like Portuguese coaches and you know what Jorge did over there. And you look at their like lineup and there's a couple good players there. They have a player that was on Benfica who probably should have played a little more, and the forward Marcos Leonardo.
Yeah.
Ruben Neves is on the team, and I think he played very well yesterday. Their goalie's really good. He was one of Morocco's best players in the World Cup.
Yeah.
He's won the Europa League with Sevilla, and he saves the penalty at the end of the game. Madrid has some key players out, along with the coach for 3 weeks. So
It's also his first match.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So figuring things
it was a
out.
little tough, and that was a tricky game you could probably see on paper. And then once Hilal scores the first goal, Madrid scores the first goal, and Hilal ties it, and then Madrid misses a penalty at the end. But overall, I think I saw a sequence again today where Hilal is doing like triangles around Madrid, and everyone's like surprised. And not that it wasn't like a surprising result, because it is, and Madrid should always be beating Hilal, but those are like the type of games
Still,
that you
Hilal
could
has
see.
players that
Correct,
like Ruben Neves or
They're not like a team where you're looking at it and you're like, wow, this team should not be beating
Right,
anybody,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you see one team that's brand new, basically, a lot of new faces. They're pretty battered as well. And
Yeah.
Mbappe obviously didn't play.
Trent got fleeced. I love it.
Yeah, Trent is a notoriously poor defender.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, you must have loved that.
Love it.
So you see one team that could be slightly disorganized, and then another team that is very well organized, as is per usual with, I think, teams coached by JJ. So again, it's one of those where initially you may think, oh, on paper, Real Madrid should win, but the Club World Cup is giving us these interesting
I mean,
matchups.
this competition is showing you that games aren't played on paper. You know
Absolutely,
what I mean?
yeah.
What was Fluminense yesterday against Dortmund,
0-0.
but had 5, 6 chances where they could have
Yeah.
easily won the game.
I'm really surprised by these Brazilian teams in this competition.
Like they
I
were
gotta
all
say.
over Dortmund,
Yeah.
and Dortmund gave the same thing what I was just talking about, same kind of excuse. Probably not excuse, because it probably is, but like they were talking about the weather and the field is not wet enough, and you know all these European teams like to play the ball on the ground and fast, and
Right.
if the field's not wet,
Play the game.
that's
That's
what I'm
it.
saying.
I-
That's what I'm saying.
exactly.
Figure it
Yeah,
out.
It's always
agreed.
going to be
Agreed.
it's always going to be an excuse.
I
and
feel like we're
think
going to hear a
everybody
lot
does it.
of
Correct.
like not complaints, but like excuses, I guess, from these European teams. Like Inter tied against Monterrey from Mexico.
Sergio Ramos.
Yeah, Dude, what a game. He's probably like close to Ronaldo's age, right? He's like almost
Probably
40.
like 38, 39,
Yeah.
I would say.
Still doing his thing.
Yeah.
I
Scoring
respect
off
He has
it.
an
right?
insane contract with that team.
Does
apparently.
he? Yeah.
Insane.
He also wears number 93 in remembrance of his goal against Atletico Madrid.
I love the pettiness.
Yeah, right. So it's
I
just,
love
Let's leave
that
the
pettiness.
face off.
yeah, that would be a funny thing, right?
Yeah.
But you just know Sergio Ramos had to do something like that late in his career, where it's either like he knows he's going to play all the time, and he probably lives in. I mean, I'm sure Monterrey is a beautiful city that he lives in, and I've read about it. They have a beautiful stadiums, and he's probably just living his dream
Loving
out
it.
there, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can speak Spanish there as well.
Oh yeah,
So I'm sure
right.
it's
You
very
didn't have to learn another language too.
Mario, any teams you've been most like excited by so far, or surprised by even?
Look, we're always rooting for everybody Portuguese on this one. So it's been interesting to see kind of the downfall of the Portuguese teams overall. But I think tomorrow is going to be a big confidence boosting game against Auckland, hopefully for Benfica to see how
You
they
would
rally
hope so.
back. Hey, look, crazier things have happened, right? But it's also interesting to see how like Botafogo is playing as well.
Botafogo plays
okay.
PSG.
In 1 hour, 30 minutes.
Right.
Oof. It's gonna be rough
And
for
so,
Botafogo.
yeah, and like the fact that River Plate is going up again, and like it is a wild time to be a fan of the sport just because of how like the hodgepodge of teams that have been put into this tournament. Like I still don't really know how they select them all, mostly because it just seems so random. But hey, we're just here to watch the games and enjoy the sport.
Speaking of random teams,
Inter
RB
Miami.
Salzburg won. I thought they were gonna lose every game. They beat Pachuca 2-1.
They have some interesting younger players, and eventually, like they get sold to either Leipzig or another
Yeah.
German team.
Or yeah,
Like
makes sense.
like Holland was there, and he ends up going to Dortmund. Like they have a ton of young talent, and a lot of the young German players end up going to Salzburg or on loan or something like that. So they're always interesting to watch. They're always in the Champions League because they just dominate the Austrian league.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then they play against Benfica and they tie 3-3 or whatever they do, like they always do.
Yeah, right. Benfica can't keep a clean sheet.
So it's always interesting to see them play because they have a bunch of random guys who end up becoming like good in 3 years.
right.
So it'll be interesting to watch
It's the
them.
Red Bull system. They have
Yeah.
a good scouting system.
And majority of times, again, they just end up going to Leipzig because why not?
It's the bigger team.
And now Klopp is the head of Red,
Red
Bull,
Bull,
so
yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what they do in a couple of years. But the guy who scored yesterday for Salzburg, the first goal, Israeli guy, Porto was supposedly interested in him. And he was a decent player. I don't know if he'll make them better than whatever disaster they are right now, but
You think he's a better option than your current option?
I think anybody that comes now could be. Everybody on the team is replaceable.
Fair.
Besides Rodrigo Mora.
And not to put you on the spot about Port, or not to get you too down, but what is your stance now? I know they're in a bit of a project phase where obviously you're going to sell your best players. You're not going to be at your best. What are your thoughts on the coach and where he stands? Would you jump the gun and think, let's get him out of here?
He's been there how long? 6 months?
He got there in January,
Okay.
the end of January, like 3 days before the market closed.
Okay.
They sold the two best players at the time on the 3 last days. So it's always a tough spot for that because he never got the team that he wanted to get. He changed the formation completely to the 3 in the back. It was a 3-4-3. And the problem is you don't have a team that can probably play that way, but you'd always like to see some development in any of those players or any of those players learning the tactics, and I don't think they're doing that. So I think that's a reflection of the coaching. Again, the players are not good enough, and that's another story, but if the players are not good enough and they're not getting better or just being
Stagnant.
competent in their tactics, like they look like a team that's not coached, or they look like a team that's not as organized as you look at like Estrela da Amadora in the Portuguese league, and they're giving more problems to Porto than Porto does to them. And that can never be a case, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And they
That's
just
crazy.
look way more organized, and every time they attack, it's like one player against 4 defenders, and nobody is joining them. And so I think it's a tactical issue. It's also they're learning a new formation that, again, nobody knows where they should be. So I think that is a coaching issue, and you can't go into a tournament against Palmeiras, which is a very good team.
Very
but-
well coached.
Well coached. He's been there 5 years. Abel's been there 5 years. They've won everything in South America. So you could take that tie, and I think the last 30 minutes.
I would say that was a good result for
Yeah,
Porto.
I think the first 60 minutes was a balanced game. Both teams had several chances to score, and then Porto could have probably lost the game at the end. But you can't lose to Miami. I don't care if you have Messi and Suarez and everybody else. They're 40 years old. You can't lose to Miami, and you can't lose to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
With all respect to both teams, right? But I think
Well, you
losing
should
to
be
losing to
arguably at a
Miami-
higher level than
Correct.
that.
I think losing to Miami and the way they did it, which was like not competitive in the second half.
They gave up after that goal.
I think the writing is on the wall, and
Yeah.
the moment he touches back down in Portugal, he's going to come right back to
You
Argentina.
already think he's on borrowed time?
I think he's gone, and it would make sense to let him go now because you still have what are we in June? You still have July and the beginning of August to prepare a new team and a new coach and new signings because they didn't make any besides one to get ready for the new season.
Right.
Now, if you give this guy 4 or 5 signings and then you wait till the first game of the season and you sack him or the third game of the season, like basically
Roger
did with
Schmidt.
Roger Schmidt last year,
Wasted time.
it's another wasted year.
And we called for his firing earlier,
Correct.
prior to the season. kind of foreseeing his
Correct.
lack
Benfica,
of,
that
yeah.
end of, not this past season, this season prior, didn't end the season well at all.
Yeah.
Everyone was all over the place. The players didn't seem to believe in the coach. They stuck with him. They bought him another 70, 60 million of transfers, whatever they did. And then they sacked the guy 3 games into the season, which he deserved to get sacked, but
Should have been sacked before.
and now
though,
you're buying,
like-
you're releasing players and you're buying players that are fit for one system and for one coach.
It
That,
could be best to cut ties early.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you think Bruno Lage is in the same chair?
No, I don't.
this
I
summer?
don't. I could see Bruno Lage staying. I really
Even
could.
if Benfica has a let's say they lose the next 2 matches, you think Bruno Lage is still
If
safe?
if we lose to Auckland City, he's out. I promise you. No, but I think you could even contextualize that Boca game pretty well and come out of it feeling much better. And then Benfica was in position to win the league. Granted, given the start that we had, right? I think Lage did a lot of good. And we have our criticisms of him, but I think he has more security than the Porto coach
Yeah,
for sure.
agreed.
I was going to make a joke. I thought, maybe it's a good time for André Villas-Boas to pull Abel for a chat while they're in the States
or
together.
André Villas-Boas could just become a coach president.
It'd be great for him to coach again.
Honestly,
He's become
that'd be
a
pretty
coach
good for Felix Boas.
But no, I think, but it's important for him to get the next coach right because in his first year of presidency, you've gone through 2 coaches.
Not a good start.
You've spent like 6-7 million on two separate coaches. You got rid of the most successful coach in the club's history, which was already a dividing moment in the club.
He could always come back.
Not with this president. I don't think they would
Yeah,
ever.
I think those
They don't
bridges
drive
are
well?
burned.
I see.
And the way Sergio Conceição is, as stubborn and hard-headed as it would take a lot for them to come back.
Real Manel.
Yeah, right. So,
Yeah.
but again, if you're going through your 3rd coach in a year, and you don't get that right, and you have another failed season, and you have 2 very, very bad seasons into your first 2 years of presidency, with the next election coming in 28, that's already a sour taste and a lot of ground to make up.
A couple of iconic presidents. I think Villas-Boas. I watched a video podcast with him and Roger Bennett of Men in Blazers
Last Saturday,
I thought
yeah.
it was wonderful and really good visibility for Port and the new. I think they did it in New York at the
So
new,
that was what we were talking about today. The New
Yeah.
Balance has done such a good job, and not only with jerseys, obviously the jerseys are really nice, but trying to promote the product of the game around here. And I think it works in Porto's favor that New Balance has 3-4 teams, or 5 teams, whatever it is, Bilbao, Porto, and a couple others.
Yeah.
And they're not like Nike or Adidas, who just have 100 teams across.
It's all template jerseys. I was
Exactly,
making this
yeah.
point.
Yeah,
That's
so
what we were
that's what we're
talking
talking
about
about. Like
earlier, yeah.
Sparkling 2 years ago had the same jersey as a random team in Poland, and like they
It's
were
annoying,
suing
yeah.
each other, right? So New Balance has their own concepts. Like even the New Porto jerseys, I showed it to them.
So
There's a white
nice.
jersey, and there's
even
like a
even as a Sporting fan, they're so nice.
has like a tile design inside. It's
Crispy.
Yeah.
it's awesome,
Yeah.
right? And then they did that. So I went to that event, not to the Villas-Boas interview. I had to miss it. I did have tickets, but after that, they had a little pop-up shop, and there was like everything was a Portuguese tile around. They have Portuguese pastries and treats and
That's
coffee.
awesome.
They were giving out free jerseys. They were giving out engraved
It's a
scarves.
good way to get new fans.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Like there
If
was a
only the
bunch of people
product
that-
on the field matched.
That's right. Right? So like, but now you have nice jerseys. So like, if you lose in style.
Absolutely.
That's true. That's true.
Look good, play good.
That's right. Well, if you look good, don't play good. Right?
Yeah, yeah. But I was going to make a point. Villas-Boas is an iconic president, but during the Boca game, they panned up to Infantino, and adjacent to him was Rui Costa and Riquelme. Riquelme is
That's
the
right.
president of Boca
Boca.
Juniors, which is just
What a trio.
2 of the most iconic number 10s.
Was Speed
and
there?
then that fella. Speed was not there, thank goodness. You just ruined
Yeah,
that
the
moment.
stream after though.
Yeah, I mean, so it's been it's interesting to see now, like the coaches that are around now and the presidents that are around now are
Former
players.
players, yeah.
Or players like when everybody else like.
I mean, to be
are-
fair, they were probably that when we were younger. We just didn't know.
Yeah,
Could be.
But I'm saying like you
These are
look
really
at,
iconic figures.
But you're looking at
I mean,
like,
Rui Costa for Benfica.
Yeah.
and for the sport itself, right? He was very good on Fiorentina and AC Milan and Portugal itself. But you like look at those guys, and even like Company now as a coach, and when you think about Company, you just think about him dominating with City all those years, and like, wow, he's already in his 2nd coaching stint, and he's
Right.
on coaching
Xavi.
one of the best teams. Xavi Alonso, right? Like
Even Flamengo's coach is a former player.
Felipe
Luis
Luis,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
retired and became the coach. At
Which
the
I
same
had
time.
no, but he had like a Guardiola effect. He started in like the under 13s, under
yeah,
17s,
and he just-
professional team, all in 1 year.
Yeah.
Now that we're being nostalgic, huge shout out to Thiago Silva, 40 years old,
Fluminense.
man in the
Went back to
Fluminense
Brazil,
defense. He had a really good moment with a Chelsea former Chelsea center back or something. Apparently, the guys at Chelsea really revere Thiago Silva.
Oh, I saw
He loves him as
it.
a-
Reece James.
Yeah.
It was a video with him, Reece James, and another center back, and they were just talking for him for like forever.
They love
after
that
him.
guy.
Yeah.
So he must be a really great dude. Yeah.
He was captain for a while.
I mean, he's captain everywhere he's
Got
been,
that,
right? Brazil, PSG,
Natural leader. He's going to be a manager one day too.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
or if not, he'll be like a president of some club too,
Yeah, who
where he
knows?
has some more respect, right?
I can see that too.
The business side must be super alluding to these guys, though, because it's one thing to be a great player. It's another thing to be really good with personalities, like Maldini is, right?
Yeah.
At AC Milan. But it's another thing to make
Ibra's
business
there now.
decisions.
Ibra's one of the sporting directors over there too.
Right. But another thing is to be like, when is it right to sell a guy? When is it right to buy a guy? You know, that's where we criticize Rui Costa. You spend 20 million for a fat striker from Fiorentina, a Cabral, and you're like, well, what is this signing? This is not really on par with what we're used to. So it's interesting. In other ways, they've been great, but it's a challenge, I think, for them as well.
And not to segue, but what do you guys think of the Gold Cup that's going on right now?
Oh, geez.
I think
Mario,
could
thoughts?
start.
Is anyone really watching it?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, I try at the very least. I try to get like the results, but especially with this tournament going on, I don't think anybody really cares.
Right, and look, we can talk about the United States performances and how they're still trying to find a vision of play under Pochettino, who, I mean, credit where credit's due, an incredible coach himself. We talk about iconic presidents, we can move on to iconic coaches and what he's done for Spurs and the opportunities that he had in other teams, but I don't think it's jiving well. I don't think his ultra defensive style of play meshes with like the wild west approach of the United States. And when you have players that are openly defying and rejecting the call to play for a national team, it doesn't bode for the cohesion and like
Captain
actual
himself, actually.
vibe. So I don't really know what to say about.
Do you
the
think
rest of the
that's
tournament.
more the coach's fault, or like just the players don't see the point? You know what I mean? Or because, like you said, it's crazy that players are saying no to a national call-up.
I also think they see the futility of this competition. Like, why am I going to put myself on the line additional games after 60+ season games for a cup that really doesn't matter for a team that's not going to go anywhere for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Right,
Yeah.
it's a bigger indictment on the competition probably. So yeah, it's not boding well for the
I mean,
Gold Cup.
CONCACAF arguably like the weakest conference.
Oceania.
Oceania, yeah.
Sure.
Shout.
But they're right there.
And the referees are notoriously horrible.
Yeah,
the,
I mean-
the product on the field hasn't really progressed as quickly as you thought it would
You
be.
always have to hold the tournaments in the same two locations because none of those other countries can
They
host
can,
it, right?
yeah.
So like
It's
yeah,
either Mexico, Canada, or
and
the United
America.
States.
But there's a couple of wrong things. I think, well, talking about if we've watched it, I've watched 2 games and they've both been the Dominican
US games?
Republic. No.
Oh, okay.
The Dominican Republic. And
Yeah, DR is doing great.
for some reason, it was on late because their games are super late. And I forgot what I was watching. I think I was watching a baseball game and they were losing, so I turned it to Mexico and the DR. I don't know if it was Sunday, whatever it was. And DR, I thought they were going to turn up and lose like 5-0. And they lost 3-2, and the goal came very late for Mexico.
Nice.
And then they watched it again yesterday, and they were beating Costa Rica. And they have some interesting players there that obviously are not like good, but they
I
were
mean, if they work well together.
they were putting on. They played a lot better than I've seen them USA play in like the last 3-4 months. And then they lost on the 90th minute goal to Costa Rica, who was like probably the fourth best team in CONCACAF. So I mean that was interesting, but I think a problem with Pochettino, and I think it happens a lot around the national teams. I think it's so hard to coach a national team in itself. Granted that there's no time to do anything.
Yeah.
So like, you might not even have to be the best tactician to be a national team coach. I think it's more you have to be a good motivator.
Get the most out, yeah.
You have to win in majority of tournaments. You have to have a team for a month, and you have to win 7 games.
Arguably, I would say like during tournament play, vibes are more important than tactics.
Correct, right? So like, and I always think, and that's why I think Mourinho, when he comes to eventually coach Portugal, because it's going to happen,
He's a great cup
I
coach.
think it'll be like that'll be very good because that's a guy who's going to get the team behind him for a month at a time, everyone's going to play for him very hard, and it's not really a tactical thing. Like especially if it gets Portugal, who's super talented. It's like go out there, know that you need to do something, win the game, and then just move on
Get
to
it
the next
done.
game, right? And then you're done with it for 7 months from now.
Right.
Because there's no way you could instill a tactical, like Guardiola would never, in my opinion, could never be a national team coach. You're just away from it for so long, and you're not, nobody can transform those ideas in 2
A
weeks
month,
of training, right?
Exactly. No, I agree
I
with
would
that.
I would say that to a point, I agree with your point, but also counterpoint is that I do think it's a hyper tactical game. It's more reactionary than proactive, right? Like you're constantly switching things in the field. You have to be reactive to play. You can study the book all you want about the team you're going to play, but these competitions happen in such a vacuum that the system, the styles, the players you have available are like going down every second. What is it Mike Tyson used to say? You have a plan until someone punches you in the face. That's the
Yeah.
entire Euro competition.
Yeah, it's more jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, coaches that are rigid and do not like adapt, and I think that's why it's kind of so troubling where Porto kind of controls the games in the first half. They have a halftime, and then they come out and they look awful at halftime. I think that's the biggest
Do you think
indictment
it's
on
like
the
a
coach.
motivation from the coach?
Well, sure, the coach has 20 minutes with the guys. It is a byproduct. It has
Yeah.
to be. If it's not, then if he doesn't take responsibility over that, then that's also a problem. So I think those are the moments where you have a time with your team. The other team is also planning on it. Like, can you make the right moves? Can you move the right guys? Like, Lodge, for instance, will always put in a second striker. Like, that's his.
That's his go-to,
He's
yeah.
going 4-4-2, fine. And it's if it works, it works. But at least he's doing something.
Something,
you know?
right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of coaches who just can't manage in-game stuff and read games. And I think that it sucks, but a lot of times, like, substitutions are pre-made. Like, you always
I
have an
think so,
idea,
too.
like, I'm going to put this guy in the 65th minute for winning 1-0, and it's probably always not the answer. And so, like, you look at, I think Rui nailed it. I think the Porto coach doesn't read the game well at all, and every time he makes 1, 2, 3 subs, the team is lost. So, like, I think they played well against Palmeiras for 60 minutes. He takes out an attacking midfielder, a winger, and 2 center midfielders, and, like, everybody that came in, they were just looking at each other. And I'm in the midfield, like, right on the midfield line, and you literally could just see the players' faces, and they're just looking at each other like, what the heck is going on, right?
Very ominous for your
And
season.
it's just
Incredibly ominous.
right? But it's just like that's worrying sign. Like if
course.
they're coming off the bench and they're coming into the game and
Lost
they just
already?
listen to
Yeah.
the coach, right? And the coach saying, you got to do this, this, and that, and they're coming on to feel like, wow, right? So
Look at these pretty lights.
that's worrying, right? So I think a lot of times that's where coaches fail too. Is you could be great before the game, but when your plan goes south,
Right.
can you adjust and fix that?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
a lot of coaches can't, right? So.
Yeah.
That in itself is a skill, you know.
Correct. I think-
that a lot of coaches lack.
Yeah, not to change the sport, but that's why Tom Thibodeau lost his job,
Yeah, right.
despite doing so well with the Knicks. It's like when it really came down to it, Rick Carlisle
do the clutch
schooled him.
moments, right?
Yeah. So the really great coaches are able to figure it out, both proactively and on the fly. So.
Speaking of the NBA, let's go back to the U.S. national team. You were talking about Alexi Lalas had some comments. You want to take it away there, Brandon?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll read it straight off. So he had some comments. I think it was after the game on Saturday, and Mario is not
Covering his
happy.
face
But
there.
so Alexi Lalas basically is saying that the U.S. national team is not at the level that they should be because of diversity, and he's talking about how it just. He's saying, so I've argued that the homogeneous nature of some other countries and cultures just in population in terms of size are much more manageable, and there is a collective understanding, more importantly, an agreement, and this is how we're going to play. But getting 11 men to represent this great country of 350 million people and all be on the same page, that is very, very difficult.
Oh man, has anyone shown him the French national
So
team?
I just,
Yeah,
I mean,
literally.
so when you look at it, like,
Or the Portuguese one?
Portugal just won, and this is easier for us because we watched it, right? So Portugal just won the U17 Euro. They just won the Nations League back-to-back. And you look around the team, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's a ton of players on that team who are not your typical Portuguese guy, white guy. It's a lot of black people who are coming from other countries and African countries who were born in Portugal and immigrated
And
towards
guess
there.
what? We got better.
And Portugal in the last 10, 15 years is one of the best nations in the world.
producing
And,
talent,
and
yeah.
they're going to continue to be. And
What
and
an
it's just-
absolutely bizarre thing
and
to
it's
say.
just a-
Yeah, right? Like, I can't believe he said it live.
So then when you look at it and it's like, so we played youth soccer here, and if you don't have money to play here, you can't play. So you'll play on your little town team, and when you become too old for that, that's kind of where that ends, because you'll never join an academy unless you can
Right.
afford
You
it.
can't afford
right?
it, exactly.
So I think that's
more
a problem we
indicative
have
of like
here.
an American problem
So
itself.
that's what we call the pay to play here. So if you don't have that, as we compare it to Europe, where if you're good, you're going to join one of those top academies, and you're not going to pay for it. You're going to live there. You're going to live with the team. Like,
You're an investment.
that's what you're doing. Like, you're going to school with them. You're learning there. I remember when we played in a big competition in Dallas, the Dallas Cup, where a ton of teams go, and we played literally the Indian national team of our age. We were 12 at the time, and they were living at the IMG Academy down in Florida for 3 months together,
Nice.
away from
Wow.
India at 12 years old. They were going to school at IMG because IMG is a big, I don't know.
Sport factory.
Yeah, they have literally the people, like the schools are in campus. They have every single sport there. A ton
like
of professional
European
athletes.
model, really.
Correct. Yeah, like they do it the way it should be, right?
Supposed to- right.
And they were telling us, like, we spoke to them after the game, like, yeah, we eat there, like, we sleep together in the same dorm, basically. And that's how they're trying to promote the game in India. And that's eventually, I think, going to work out, especially a country that big. Like, got to find 18 players that can play the game well,
Right.
And but if nothing ever changes, that's going to be the problem. we're always gonna
Have
run
you
into.
noticed that like the 3 countries with the most population do not care about soccer?
Yeah, and it's
That's interesting, yeah.
It's the U.S., India, because for them it's cricket,
Yeah.
and then China.
Yeah.
It's not very strong culturally. I wonder why that is actually.
It's definitely puzzling, but again, in Europe you have all these countries, like immigrating countries, and they just keep producing talent left and right. And I think Rui said France, and if you look at France, like every single year, every single level of their national team is just loaded, and then you find another player the next year, and it's like, oh wow, that guy's French too, right? So it's like,
Right. It's crazy that colonizing continued, but like in soccer now.
Well,
It's crazy. Go ahead, Mario.
I'm not sure.
No, I was
I
gonna say Mourinho used to say that if the French gave up all of their like non-French-born players, African countries would have some of the best
Agreed.
national teams
Yeah.
in the world.
The
I-
Contes, the Paul Pogba's even.
yeah,
Of course.
Yeah, I
Mbappe.
struggled a lot with Lawless's comments because one, first and foremost, there's a bit of truth in the sense of like the U.S. national team lacks a commitment or desire to engage in uniformity of a style of play, right? Like it is the brash style of the United States to go up there, mess it up. I mean, they've done it at all of their World Cup appearances, like super counter-attacking, just kind of breaking through defenses and trying to score a goal and lasting on towards the last second. But I also struggle because he himself has benefited from diversity of play and ideas.
Yeah.
He played D1 at Rutgers in the 90s. I highly doubt that there was any white kids on that team. Then he goes on to play for a bunch of MLS teams, goes down to Colombia or I believe Ecuador and plays for a while, played in Italy, in which, hey, was a pretty white league in the 80s and 90s, but was diversifying itself. So he's benefited, hell, his own positions as they were at the head of the LA Galaxy and a few other MLS franchises, benefited from the diversity of players, of ideas and tactics. And so to sit here from this golden pedestal on ESPN and say diversity is bad when your entire career has benefited because of it, what galad.
Right. It's a little out of touch.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are the voices that kind of run American soccer. So hence our frustration.
My favorite part of this whole tournament, sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
My favorite part of this whole tournament so far is seeing the Americanization of like soccer.
Yeah.
Like sponsors while the ball's in play is crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Crazy. Showing commercials during the game is crazy.
well, we're lucky they didn't cut the game off yet to show.
Yeah.
No, they did.
they?
We were watching it today and it went to commercial mid-game.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, if that was the Portugal game, maybe it was justified, but
I kind of wish it went to commercial a little earlier. I think I don't want to criticize DAZN too much because Because honestly, the stream quality has been pretty good.
It has been good.
They let me
yeah.
exit out of the little app and
Are they
and do other things on my
Turner?
phone.
They're Turner.
I don't know who owns Disney. That's
Honestly,
a really
I
good
thought they were a
question.
German team,
I
channel.
know they're big in Europe.
They're pretty independent, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for them to land this I don't-
FIFA deal? That's a
yeah,
big thing, right?
For them to do this, they're providing the games for free as well. So you kind of have to run that.
They did
Yeah.
get they got like $1 billion from Saudis.
Oh crap!
Do it
Makes
for
sense.
free.
Yeah. So how do you guys make money, Zuckerberg? We run ads. But yeah, so I don't want to criticize it too much. It is interesting. I think it kind of follows that happens in South America, where they'll put on this like absurd ad during a soccer game, and
Crazy.
or the commentators will actually do
Sponsor
the
something?
sponsor
Yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah.
So
It's like watching a YouTube channel.
You know, I can't knock it. You got to make your money.
Going back to the national team, how do you guys feel about the World Cup next year? Seeing how we're playing currently, all the problems we're having currently with players not wanting to play.
From an American front or Portuguese? American.
America, yeah.
Oh, I could care less. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
I mean, as hosts, you know what I mean. It seems
It'll
like
matter.
we're
It'll
a
matter.
little way off.
It's definitely worrying. Not that like you expect them to go far, but you
Hey,
would
man,
probably
in
say
my football manager game, they won this year.
you would probably say they have regressed like severely from the last 3-ish World Cups, 2-ish World Cups, and that should never be the case. Like this should be a country that is promoting development, and we're kind of going backwards, and that's kind of like what's worrying, right?
But
So
going back to what you were saying before, that could. I'm pretty sure the pay to play is what's like
for sure.
Oh, it's a systemic
pulling
issue.
into that.
It'll,
Yeah,
it'll
you know.
always be, and it'll continue to get worse. Like you would think, not making the World Cup, whatever year that was, that they didn't make the World Cup, was like the low point of it, and it was. But like, what's on the field now is not much better.
But
Right.
but we're talking about the United States of America. Like if you're
Exactly.
going to try to like solve youth soccer here, we can't solve anything here.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
have
That's
50
true.
very unique states. They're going to do whatever they want.
True.
Everyone's going to do whatever they want. People are always going to pay to play. It is what it is.
I think like I don't know if it's the best way, but we got to revamp the league to get our national team better because our league is ran. Me and Mario were speaking about this before. It's ran like the NFL. It's a closed league. You have to pay to get into.
Oh,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
absolutely.
There's no relegation. There's no promotion. So it's like at the end of the season, if you're not going to win anything, you're just stagnant and you're never going to grow.
Well, they beat European teams now, so.
They must be on the up.
No, but in all honesty, like it's another part of why it's so worrying is that Mexico was so dormant for so long, and I think they're going to start getting going again. But you have Canada on the other side, who's
Shout out to Canada. My mom's Canadian,
There
so
you
I
go.
love to see the
in
renaissance.
in the last 2-3
Shout out
years.
Jesse Marsh.
Jesse
Yeah.
Marsh has turned the program around, and you look around, and they have some decent players who are now starting to get into Europe.
Love Ted Lasso.
And Alfonso Davis was injured, can make it. He's still with the team, and that was kind of like the video they put up against Pulisic was that like, hey, Alfonso Davis is hurt and he's here, and like you're
That's
not,
not a good-
and you're
that's
not
not a
here,
good look
right?
at all.
So like it
It's a
didn't
true
look,
Canadian.
it didn't look well for that, but I think Canada right now I would say is the best team in North America, and
You think they're going to make the final? I don't think the U.S. is going to make the final.
I think they're going to win the tournament.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
no,
over
wait,
Mexico?
Wait, the Gold Cup?
Yeah, the Gold
I
Cup.
thought I was going to say not the World Cup. They're not going to win the World Cup.
No.
But they, it was already interesting to see them at the last World Cup, and they were okay. But that was their first time in forever, I think. But I think they're going to win the Gold Cup. They're better coached, I would say, right now, and the players are like just super bought into what Jesse Marsh is doing.
Super important.
And they're kind of very opposite of the United States. Like everyone wants to go play for Canada.
Is Eustáquio still playing?
So I was going to get to that. So Eustáquio is Canadian. He plays for Porto, and Porto had like 2 friendly games before this tournament, and he chose to go to Canada, play the friendlies with Canada, and just meet Porto here in New Jersey.
So maybe it's like a locker room thing too.
For sure.
Yeah, the
he
players just
could have
don't
easily
wanna
been
be in
like,
that
I'm not going to
environment."
play in the tournament. Why am I going to go play in these friendlies,
Right.
right? He went to go play in the friendlies, joined the club team when they got here.
And that's the commitment that the U.S. is currently lacking heavy.
Yeah. It might be an ego thing, like
I think so too. I think for the first time in American history, I don't think we've ever had as many. I don't want to use the term prima donnas, but kind of like prima donna. We never had so many players play at a high level in Europe. You know what I mean?
they've never won anything. So
Yeah,
there's
This
no
is
way-
true,
think
too.
The overall player quality is at the highest it's ever been.
I agree.
You've got teams at the top of every league, but again, that uniformity approach, like, do we feel the patriotism of playing with the national team? I was just looking up kind of what the last time it was hosted on U.S. soil, 1994. USA goes to tie with Switzerland with a beats Colombia 2-1,
Wow.
which is crazy at that time.
That was the-
Barely loses against Romania, and then
Was it?
loses 1-0 against Brazil. Like, this is a team that could do it, and kudos to him because Lawless was on the team, so great. But can we do it again? I don't know.
Well, they just lost to Switzerland 4-0 the other day in
Hey,
35 minutes.
you win some, you lose some.
How diverse was that 94 team? Is what I would ask.
That's not fair.
It was all white, we know.
All right, Mario. So there's your answer.
Even if you look at Switzerland, they got Brilliant Bolo. It does not look like Swiss,
Yeah.
the typical Swiss.
But-
So this argument is so stupid.
I was gonna mention. Growing up, I remember, it wasn't that the U.S. did particularly well at tournaments, but there was this sort of identity
They
to the
fought-
teams that
they
were
fought
led
at least,
by
yeah.
Clint Dempsey and
Donovan.
and Donovan. There was this great, right? You have
Tim
this
Howard.
this freaking parading center midfielder who's this psycho from the south. There was this
You
identity
had that
and
like
spirit.
underdogish
Yeah.
mentality.
But they had that steel to them, you know
Well,
what I
I
mean?
think
Even
that's
if they
what
lacked
you
in
said.
quality.
Sure,
They're a
certainly.
bunch of prima donnas now who are like,
Yeah.
they play in Europe and they think, wow, we should be better than everybody else, and it hasn't been the case, especially in CONCACAF last
Yeah.
couple
Oh,
of
look
And
at
then-
me, I'm Christian Pulisic. I play for AC Milan.
And then the Reina and Berhalter debacle
Yeah, that was,
is
That's
probably
another
set-
thing,
set
too.
them
That
back
probably,
a
like,
decade.
spewed through the rest of the team,
Of
too, you know?
course. The whole
'cause-
federation must be incredibly pulled,
Yeah,
for lack
yeah.
of a better term. There must be something is rotten in the state of Denmark.
Well, he had
Yeah.
gotten fired and then got rehired.
Right.
After a conductive search, they brought an agency in to do a coaching search, and they
Quick-
hired the same guy they fired.
A quick shout out to my high school. I'm a St. Benedict's
So American.
alum. Berhalter and Claudio Reina, Reina's dad, are both.
Yeah.
They met at St. Benedict's. So,
That's
so
crazy.
shout out to
Jersey stain is everywhere.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We used to run a Carney and St. Benedict's was the epicenter of American soccer back then. So
Not wrong.
yeah,
American captains from Jersey, too.
yeah, true.
Yeah, but it's definitely a worrying time, and especially what's coming up within 11 months.
Yeah. I don't even think they're ready.
They're far from ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, arguably, I would think, like, Canada, comparing to their last tournament where they lost all the games, but it was their first tournament, maybe, like, now playing better together, playing longer together, congelling as a team, they might, I don't think they'll make out of the group stage, but I think they'll show out. Mexico, probably around a 16 curse, probably
Yeah.
won't make it further.
They're a tough team in those top competitions, but they always end up losing to like Argentina or somebody right away. So
But we have plenty to be excited for with Portugal. So at least there's that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think you could say.
I would hope. No,
it's a-
Roberto Martinez over there, but
We shall see. I think.
But I sent this clip to Rui actually a couple days ago. People were talking about the cohesiveness of that national team is so much different than it ever was. Like before, you would look at some players and like their ego and Ronaldo's ego probably going against each other. Like the guy is talking in the video how Ronaldo's probably trying to coach and train, and it was Cancelo at the time and arguing with him like, who are you to kind of tell me what to do?
Cancelo's like the
right, like
the poison at every club he goes
so
to.
like the
Yeah, he
ego.
got sold out early in this tournament. I saw.
So like he's the ego, like the ego is there, right? But I think everyone's kind of on the same page. Like, and Bruno can have an ego too, right? He's the best player in United. He's been the best player in England for like a while. One of the best players in England for a while. You could
Being the
easily
best
tell.
player at United's not saying a lot anymore.
Correct, right?
Sorry,
So-
Mario.
No, but I think like they've all put their egos aside, and I think especially with the younger guys coming up, I think everyone's kind of on the same page, and that's kind of what took them over in this last.
I kind of hope it's similar to what happened to Argentina, where everyone got behind Messi.
Yeah.
And you look at the squad, and it's not really that spectacular on paper, right? But there is
They
this
just don't lose.
There is this spirit. You want to win for this guy. I think we're finally seeing it at the Seleção level.
I think so, too.
The guys they seem to admire Ronaldo.
You think
really.
Ronaldo's coming here for the World Cup?
I
You think
really-
he'll make
I
it?
hope so. I think that's been cleared. So
We didn't even mean it like that.
let me see this.
Maybe we'll get 5 penalties like Messi did. And,
I'll take it as a
Hey,
Portuguese.
you're not allowed to talk bad about that
No,
guy.
today is when
After
I
today.
lash it out. No,
Let's see that free pick live.
that was bad.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about today anymore.
But I mean, like, Porto played so well for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, that lasted a while. They got a penalty in 5 minutes. But,
So, like, realistically, though, how do you feel going into the last match?
well, there's nothing to play for. So I mean,
Miracle at this point?
I think the players already don't play hard enough, and I think if they're going to a game where they know there's nothing to play for, they're going to be in big trouble.
Brandon, for our viewers, could you detail exactly what it would take for Porto to get through?
Yep. So they would need to overcome a 3-goal deficit because Palmeiras won 2-0 today, and Palmeiras would need to lose to Inter Miami. So let's say Miami beats them 1-0 and Porto wins 2-0, they can go through. I'm more confident that Miami wins than Porto beats the Egyptians by 2 goals at this point. So we're in a rough spot.
That is rough.
If you're going to any of those games, just get there on time. I mean, get there early because they're moving tickets to fill out hard camera side of the stadium. So if you have a ticket that's on the other side of the stadium, make sure you get there and clear that up because you'll be late to the game.
Yeah, tell us your story about going to MetLife.
So I went to the Porto game against Palmeiras.
Check out Brandon's TikTok.
Yeah, just going TikTok, I became famous in a day. But no, so we had tickets in the 341 was our section, and my buddy bought 12 because it was his family and me and my father. And so we wanted to get there a little early, so the train got in at like 3:30, and we go into, you need a ticket to get into the fan zone, which is just your game ticket. Most of the World Cups, you could just get into the fan zone, and then you just get into the match with an actual ticket. But this one, you need a ticket to get into the fan zone, and Porto had a couple of, like Quaresma was there, a couple of legends were out there, so everyone wanted to get in and go see. So me and my father, I downloaded tickets 3 months ago, and we go, and then the day of, like it says ticket not valid on my Apple Wallet, and I'm like, oh, this is just a glitch, like whatever.
Right.
So I go to scan it, it's all red, and it's all red, and it's all
Oh,
red, and I asked the
no.
first lady that was scanning the ticket, she's like, oh, I don't know, you have to ask the guy that's over there. So she pointed me in one direction. The guy had no clue, and he's like, I think you just need to get to a ticket booth. And I'm asking them like where it's at, and he's like, I think you have to leave like the parking lot and go around. And I'm like, this just can't be real. So we walked out. I asked another security guard if he knows where the ticket booth. He said, I don't know. And he pulls out a map. He's looking at the map, and he's like, yeah, I can't figure it out. So this is like 30 minutes of me and my father walking around, like trying to figure it out. We finally just walked and found it ourselves, and we found the ticket booth. We found the ticket booth, and then we're going to the ticket booth, and there's like 10 people. They just let us in because it was a glitch. But then we get up to section 341, and 341 has barricaded closed. So like the whole side that's not on the camera is closed off, and I'm like, this can't be real. So we asked the security guard that's there. He's like, you're just gonna have to go to guest services and figure it out. Okay, so we walk to guest services, it's closed. We walk to the next guest service, it's closed again. We finally found one on the other side of the stadium. And the lady is like looking, she's like, I think we're gonna have to give you 2 new tickets. And I said, but there's 12 of us that are coming. She's like, can only give you 2, there's only 2 of you here.
man.
And my buddy is outside now trying to get in, and his tickets are also not scanning. But now when he's trying to get in, the line is like 300 people.
Jeez.
So it's all happening to the same people.
So if you're going to go watch the game,
Get there early.
Get there super early.
They ended up giving us 2 random tickets in section 3 something. Didn't want to sit there because there was a bunch of Palmeiras fans. My buddy ends up at 5:59 getting tickets to section 112, and we had to go sit there. So if you don't want to be late to the game, show up early, especially if you're going to the game where it's not sold out.
Especially at MetLife, apparently.
And at MetLife, nobody knows any answers, so just
Thanks for testing that out.
Welcome to Jersey.
Just figure it out. I'll be going again on Monday, but there's going to be even less people than there was.
I think I might go on Monday too.
You'll probably get a ticket for like
Support.
$15.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there as well.
Okay.
All right, with a little goal in field trip.
Yeah, we'll report live.
And with that, gentlemen, thank you guys so much for being here again. This is Goal In International. It's always such a pleasure to have Mario, Brandon, and Rui here to yap about soccer and the U.S. national team and whatever floats our boat, you know. Join us again next week, and have yourselves a good night.
See you guys.
Take care.